Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Brian. I'm sorry, I messed it up. Welcome back to the Peruvian Waltz podcast. Not a great way to start this, but I'm kind of in a bad mood. So you're gonna hear a lot of talking from me in this first 20 minutes. So first, let's introduce Peter Galindo. How are you, Peter?
Brian, I'm doing well. Obviously, I sympathize with you. I cannot wait for this rant that you've been talking about. It should be highly entertaining for both myself and the viewers. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to that.
All right, and before we continue, we'd like to send a shout out to Christopher, who last minute he couldn't make it. He probably is watching and listening to us, so if you're watching, Christopher, telling you hello, and you can enjoy this rant from the distance now and not have to join in. So, yeah. Peter, I'll start with you. What do you want to talk about in this Melgar game?
Well, I mean, there are so many places we could start, certainly. Let's just kind of start with, I guess, the big picture and maybe work our way down. At the end of the day, say whatever you want about how well Wanderers played or how poorly they played, et cetera, et cetera. On the surface of this, a team who had a very successful season last year, of course, won the Torneo de Verano this time almost a year ago, they end up losing to a second division team in Chile. It's a lot different losing to a lower league side in Brazil or Argentina even. But to lose against a second division side from Chile, where the quality of the league, Brian, as you've discussed many times, is not that much different from Peru, it is a bit of a black eye for Peruvian football in continental competitions. And it's just another string of really embarrassing eliminations or early exits, whatever you want to call them, for Peruvian sides in Copa Libertadores. And just when it looked like, you know, maybe Melgar, after getting a favorable result away after not playing so well, at least in the first half, they end up losing at home in Arequipa in what looked to be, Brian, a fantastic atmosphere. And I actually feel very sorry for the supporters because when that stadium is packed, playing in Arequipa is honestly magnificent. And we saw with the national team, we've seen him with Melgar in Copa Libertadores, but unfortunately they couldn't get the job done. But yeah, what do you think overall about the two legs for Melgar?
So we'll start with this a little calmly. The first leg was bad. We can all agree on that, but it wasn't. Well, maybe it wasn't as disappointing as here. I mean, they played worse, I think, in the first leg, despite the result. But this was more disappointing. So this is definitely like between the pick of the two legs. People are gonna remember this leg right here for the loss. It was at home, and they lost it. Yeah. And the first leg they played worse though, because there was a lot of they got lucky to not go 2 down in the first few minutes. And the goal was a spectacular goal. There was nothing they could have done there, but you still gave him so much space and time.
Yeah.
He was all alone and he shot by himself. Mm-hmm. So like he was given so much space. Those are always risky tactics. Like you can always, if you see a player shoot, it's either gonna go up above the crossbar or it's gonna be a goal. I would say it's a 50-50 chance almost. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the game today was just embarrassing. It was just painful to watch. It was almost as bad as the Capital game last year, which was a lot worse. But this was just painful to watch. The only 3 players that really stood out, they didn't even stand out. Well, only one did. Even the only 3 players who were even close to being decent: Giancarlo Carmona, Omar De Gea, Diego Penny. Those are the only 3 that looked competent enough, and that is so frustrating because they have some decentish players. But then it also brings up the question: Melgar has a ton of money. They pay better than Uruguayan clubs. I'm willing to bet they pay better than most Chilean clubs, if not all. Mm-hmm. So why do they keep bringing these players in that aren't just decentish? Like they're good for Peru, but you're not going to make a step forward. I mean, the best example was, I guess you could say, Ruiz when he played at Melgar. Yeah, not many people remember he played at Melgar, but he was on 35,000 soles, I think, per month. which is really good for Peru, and they pay really well. And if you want to believe even worse, Vergara Silaso plays better than Melgar, and they're in the Libertadores as well, and they're bringing very good players. So that's another thing to worry about. And as for Melgar itself, the frustrating thing is the owner doesn't really care. If he cares, he's going to bring in really good players, but he's not. His interest is not always peaking, and I can tell it's not peaking now. I mean, Emmanuel Bencucci, he's decent. I mean, he's looked good, but the only reason they brought him in is because he's Messi's cousin. That's his claim to fame. I mean, I'm sure they saw a bit of him before they brought him in, of course, like videos or maybe a few games, but I'm not convinced he was the best player they can bring in, with all due respect.
Yeah, I think it was pretty telling that even the commentators on Fox Sports had to mention right away for Biancucci when he was coming into the game, oh, hey, here comes Messi's cousin. And I'm like, yeah, that pretty much says it all, doesn't it? Agreed. Yeah, 100% it is. That's probably the reason why he's still playing at a relatively high level at this point. I do agree with you on the three standouts. It's unfortunate for Carmona that he got sent off, but I still don't think that completely, ruins what was a fantastic performance for him at right back. I thought that he was very stable, much like he was in the first leg as well. I thought he had a very good showing too. Tejeda being withdrawn, that was a head scratcher to me. He was the only player, in my eyes anyways, who was really causing any havoc in the final third. Bernardo Cuesta finally had someone to provide him service. And there were a couple of very good chances that Melgar should have buried. But when he was taken off, I'm thinking to myself, okay, you're down 1-0 at home. You need a goal to force extra time. Why are you taking off the man who has been your most creative player throughout the however many minutes it was, 70, 75, whatever it was? I can't remember when he was taken out. But that was I'm sure you would agree, Brian. That, to me, just kind of encapsulated Mesa's coaching across the two legs. He was simply, I think, outcoached by Cordova, and when Melgar were under pressure, especially when they took out the Tejeda, they just looked bereft of ideas, and the pressure seemingly got to them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Tejeda, but the thing that frustrated me the most about that situation with Tejeda is you take off a wide player and you're not even playing wide. I mean, like, you bring on Loyola and you're still trying to go into the middle. Yeah. They're clearly packed in. They're clearly compacted. Oh, yeah. They're narrow as hell, and they just don't want to. They didn't want to practice through the wings. There's so much space in the wings. I mean, you could have opened them up by trying to get past their. They're trying to get past their basically their tactical marking. Whether it looked zonal. It didn't look like closing down. It looked more zonal to me. You could have tried to try to take advantage of that, try to create space, but they just try to play it in there. They just try to play it in or have a long ball, hoof it up, and then see if there was a chance was created. It's so frustrating to watch. There's such tactical ineptness. And Mesa has been a great manager. He's stepped in, but he got it.
Yeah, and to your point, maybe we can go a little bit deeper into this. To your point about, obviously Melgar having the financial backing to at least bring in better players and to improve that squad and to actually make it at least a decent enough team to have a respectable Libertadores campaign. I'll just play devil's advocate here. Maybe the reason why, in terms of maybe why better players don't come in, maybe they're just not interested in coming to Peru. But as you said, the fact that he doesn't really care enough to improve that squad is probably the leading factor. And I will say this. Ricardo Gareca has constantly praised the Peruvian league. And he said, no, the quality is fine. Yes, they need to make some tweaks here and there, but the quality of player is good enough. But once again, as we mentioned last week, when we were talking about Universitario's elimination, there is a mental problem within the Peruvian game in that the players just don't seem to have the psychological strength. And maybe that'll improve with time as this next crop comes in and as Peruvian football, at least with the national team, is improving and giving the people a source of pride. But you could just see that in this game tonight with Melgar, they almost got the ball and they were like, oh my God, what do I do with this? Do I hoof it long? Do I play it out wide? Well, no, we just keep playing compact and narrow and try to do it all ourselves. It's just, that to me is the biggest obstacle. And I feel like, in a way, Gareca is right. The quality's there. It's just the mental aspect, which I think clearly needs a lot of improvement.
Melgar is, I'll get to the first part of that little comment in a second. But the second part about Melgar, about the quality, I fully agree there's quality in the league. There's no doubt in that. Mm-hmm. But there's two issues I'm seeing. First of all, where's the new quality going to come up? Because most of the best players have already left for Mexico. Yeah. And the second question is, Omar Fernandez is gone. I mean, this team is quantity over quality for me. And the quality isn't there anymore. Cuesta was all isolated, and that's because he didn't have Omar Fernandez. That's what I said last week.
Yes.
And I stand by that because it showed today that him and Emmanuel Herrera's success was down to Fernandez. He was the best player I've seen in Peru in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. So he's definitely been missed. And as for the first little bit you said, I have to disagree with the not interest. I mean, that's not an excuse. I mean, there's 100 Brazilians in the second tier who come in and they can do a job. Look at Jorge Wolsterman. They don't play that high up either. They play, I think, lower than Arequipa. They reached the Libertadores quarterfinals, and they had a few really under the radar Argentinians and Brazilians, like that Serginho, for example. So yeah, they might have lost 8-0, and that they might have had their quality exposed. But I mean, you could still do something tactically. I mean, you don't have to bring in these players who really are just good, but they're not. They're more of a quantity over quality type league. I mean, they'll do fine in the league, but in the Libertadores just won't be enough. And it was the same thing last year. And what was with bringing Joao Villamarin, Jean-Pierre Fuentes after being linked with Andy Polo? That makes no sense.
Yeah. That's actually a good point. I completely forgot about that. I mean, I do agree with you. I was just kind of throwing it out there as possible reasons why really there is no excuse. Because even if, I mean, let's just say that was the case, right? Most footballers, if you give them a decent enough salary and you sell the team well enough to them to convince them, hey, you know what, this is a good side, this would be a good place for me to play, they will go. I mean, especially if you give them a decent wage. The quality league doesn't really matter, right? I mean, we see countless examples of this all over the world. So yeah, I mean, I would fully agree with that. I was just trying to potentially try to come up with some sort of reasoning as to why this isn't the case, but I think you nailed it there with ownership and just their current state. Because again, to go from being linked to Andy Polo to then bringing in the type of players you brought in, that is quite the drop in quality.
Agreed. Yeah, Melgar just shambolic tonight. They were disappointing. They weren't particularly awful, though. That's the thing that makes me mad. They were just so toothless up front. They had that one. They were awful in the first leg. This second leg, they were poor. They weren't awful. They were a lot worse in last match, and yet they lost here because they were so toothless. And even last match, the only goal Melgar's only goal was from the defensive error. So he literally went. He literally got the error, and Cuesta was able to finish it. He was on a break. So yeah, Melgar really disappointing. Is there any other thoughts you want to add to this, Peter, before we can move on to happier times?
Yeah, I guess we can. No, there was one thing that I was maybe going to bring up. It's kind of escaping me now, but I mean, you know, it seems like every time, I'll just recap it by saying this because I don't think I'm going to remember my initial point, but I'm just going to round it off from my end to say it's a constant kick to the stomach to see Peruvian teams performing like this, because these are, in some cases, I mean, Universitario for sure, but these are big clubs. They're very successful clubs. I mean, you compare them to other quote-unquote giants in the South American leagues, they should be, you know, right around that same level, yet they're not. And I mean,
Santiago Wanderers is no better than Sporting Cristal or Alianza Lima.
Oh no!
And yet they handle them and they're like, no comment. I have to get that out.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? Just to maybe round it out, I think I actually remember what I was going to say. Wanderers did not win both legs, or at least come out triumphant in both legs. Melgar, in my eyes, lost it. Because if they had played up to their level, like we've seen them do in the previous phases of, I mean, even going back to the last Torneo de Verano, you take that team and put it against this Santiago Wanderers team, they cruise through and get to the third round and maybe make a push for the group stage as well. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Well, the thing that really bothers me about this is they could have been this team and then gone out to, say, Santa Fe. I'm assuming Santa Fe is going to be Táchira. They could have gone up to them and then go to the Sudamericana and then have more of a shout at the continental competition. Maybe get some more experience. Although there's no excuse for that because this is 3 years running. That actually 4 years almost. No, 3 years. I
think it's 3.
Yeah, three. Because I'm thinking there's one match I was thinking of. This is 3 years. This is 3 years where they're playing. They play in the group stages. It's not like you just play one match. You should have enough experience by now. And while the groups that they got were tough and they were never going to make it out of those, could have at least shown something else. And it's not only that, but the thing that bothers me the most, and this is classic Peruvian football here, they lost 5-0 to Junior a few years back and they won 4-0 at home. I mean, come on. Like, how does that even happen?
That's a facepalm worthy moment.
Christopher nailed it. He said Melgar should just lost in the third round, go to Sudamericana. They didn't even lose in the third round, lost in the second round. So,
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Not even a consolation.
I guess we can move on here. So, what do we have next on schedule? We have the start of the Centralizado, which it's a shame we don't have Christopher because he caught almost all the matches. And I know you only caught a few. But I guess we can talk about the start of the league and maybe make a few predictions. We're not going to go over every match because then we'll be here till the cows come home. So it will be so I guess we can start with the two big teams, Alianza and La U, who both started with 1-1 draws. Alianza with a disappointing home draw and La U with a good away draw. So what do you make of these results, Peter? I guess you can start it off again.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with Alianza because I did actually pay close attention to that. Full disclosure, they clearly missed Kevin Quevedo and Carlos Asquez. As I tweeted to you, no Quevedo, no party for Alianza. And it was clear because they definitely struggled to create chances. After he came onto the pitch, the momentum of the game changed. And it's clear that he is going to be a massive difference maker this year, even more so than last year. It's a massive season for him. I've mentioned it countless times. I'm really excited to see what he does. Alianza, though, overall will be fine. They did play the Supercopa in midweek. They had to rotate the team twice. Now that they're going to be on that regular rotation and schedule, I don't anticipate them, sort of struggling. I mean, they will maybe on occasion because that happens. Teams have off days. It's just a part of football. But yeah, for them, certainly not impressive, but I think you put those two players in and it's a completely different story from an Alianza point of view. I'll let you discuss Alianza before we move on to La U. Yeah,
Quevedo had a really promising match in the Sport Boys, but Bengochea, as usual, he likes to rotate. So it's not really a surprise to not see him. I think we'll see him starting in a few matches. Not sure how soon, but he'll definitely start. So it's hard to know where to go from here with Alianza. As I said, I have no hope for them in the Libertadores, even if Olimpia make it through to the group stages. But, I mean, I'm hoping they put at least some sort of fight. Yeah. And based on what we saw today, it's going to be a bit hard because every time they played an international team, friendlies or not, they've lost, and they've lost pretty badly as well.
Yes.
So that's my main concern for Alianza. They've looked okay, but they're still looking a bit inconsistent and still looking over-reliant on Butron and Araujo to kind of bail them out. Their fullbacks are still terrible.
Yeah, so, no, that's true.
If Junior play them, if Junior go to the group stage, they're going to tear them apart on those wings.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's not good. I don't think Boca will necessarily tear them apart on those wings, but Palmeiras and Junior definitely will because their nation's known for just being really speedy in the wings, really good at dribbling, and that's not a good omen for Alianza.
No, definitely not. And yeah, completely agree. The fullbacks, I mean, I was almost surprised at how little they were kind of pushing forward. Like they were almost like afraid to go past the halfway line. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing? Like, you're struggling to create chances. I mean, you can push up and not risk getting exposed at all. It's not like you're, getting completely outplayed in your own third. You're actually dominating the game. And the fact that they weren't kind of taking it to Comerciantes was a bit of a surprise. One thing I do want to say, though, just about the overall game, if I can, before we move on to Lau, Carlos Correa in that Comerciantes midfield was stupendous. Maybe a young player to watch this year. He was a defensive monster, breaking up all sorts of Alianza attacks. The reason why I think Tomas Costa did not have as strong of a game as he could have had is because of Correa. So I just want to give him a shout out there. The ex-Alianza Atletico and Los Camaines midfielder from a few years back. I think it was actually developed at Camaines from, 4 years ago, I think it was. So certainly someone to watch on. These made sort of baby steps up the Peruvian football ladder, so to say.
So yeah, he must be an Norteño, but yeah, he's that's it. That's interesting. I'll admit this is the game I've paid least attention to over the week. I was watching I've seen all the games, but I felt like I needed a little bit of a break. I still saw the beginning and the end, so that was enough for me. Edson Cuncho was a really good player last year in the Segunda, and I feel like he's going to do it well this year. He already got his debut goal, so good for him. Carlos Correa is one I'm not too familiar with, actually, but if your commentary is anything to go by, then I'll trust you, and I'll say you want to watch this year. Comerciantes, I said in my preseason preview, they don't look too bad. They don't look great, but they're going to stagnate. They're not going to get better. They're not going to get worse. They're just going to stay in that middle, I think.
Yeah.
So
which is
good work from them. The only problem is their stadium, which apparently they can't play there either. So it's
what else is new?
What to say.
Yeah, let's not get into that. You might start another rant again. So
I've used my quota. So anyways, Sport Rosario versus Low. I think this is a good result for Low because Sport Rosario reinforced themselves really well and they took the game to Low. Although it did get a little even as the game went on. So I think that this is a good result for Low, and despite some of the shambolic defending, Low got away with it again, which means it might have been a good thing that they progressed any further in the Libertadores, because if they beat Wilstermann, which I think they could have beat Wilstermann personally, if they beat Wilstermann, they would have gone torn apart by Vasco da Gama. So there's this good thing that they're not going to be accumulated, but there's also the argument that the money could have gone Low, which wasn't going to do much anyways because of how much depth they are, but a little more of the better. So no complaints there.
Yeah, definitely. So I caught only some of the game because I was working during the Super Bowl, which is when the game was on, the Rosario Lau game, unfortunately, which has now sort of been the motivation behind our new slogan. We will still cover Peruvian football even during the Super Bowl, or at least Brian will, because he could not care less about it.
I prefer to watch Australian football, AFL, rugby, Gaelic football, and Narrowin football over the American football, to be honest.
Boom. Well, then that's fine. At least we'll cover it on Super Bowl night.
This isn't a rant about Super Bowl, so I don't want to ramble any longer.
Exactly. Yeah, and in terms of what happened to Lau, I mean, they were, in terms of their goal, I hesitate to use this term, but they were, bailed out by another set piece. But they played pretty well, it must be said, based on what I saw. But Rosario gave a very good account of themselves. Raul Tito, the ex-Lau player, ironically enough, actually looked very, very good in this game. But
celebrated.
Yeah, exactly. Which was kind of cool.
He was really happy about the goal because Lau really did not treat him very well.
No, they definitely did not. But, I mean, good on him. He's getting minutes. He's still young enough to still reach his potential. And that was not an easy finish at all. So kudos to him for pulling that off. Kind of behind him, he kind of turns and then just kind of not scissor kicks it, but side volleys it into the net. So, I mean, it really was an impressive finish. The one thing I will say about Lau, which might be a bit of an issue at times this year, the service up to Daniel Chavez or whoever happened to be receiving the ball up front during the course of the game was lacking. And maybe I can defer to you on this because, again, I didn't watch the entire match. But Paulo de la Cruz and Roberto Ciucho, this is going to be sort of their year to shine. I'm not sure how effective they were in this game, just in terms of their chance creation or just their overall impacts. So I'll let you answer that question, Brian, just to kind of see how they played.
Neither were very effective, to be honest. Paulo de la Cruz, I mean, this is a big step up for him because this is his first time playing in altitude. At least I think it's his first time playing in altitude. And this is always going to be tough for him. But Ciucho is looking like a player that's just letting himself be beat. So I'm starting to lose hope that he's really going to be a promise. He has the talent. He has a lot of talent, but just doesn't always show. He's a bit lazy. Reminds me a bit of Carrillo in some ways, but he's like a mix of Carrillo and Flores. Style of Carrillo mentality, or style of Flores, sorry, and mentality of Alde Carrillo. So I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I'm starting to lose faith. I had faith. I had a hope in him, and I'm still going to give him time, but slowly, I'm starting to see that his mentality is just the same as every other Peruvian player, and it's weak. So, and De La Cruz is also a long time to develop, so we're gonna have to wait on him.
Yeah, unfortunately. But, I mean, that's understandable. In terms of the Ciucho stuff, the one thing I will say to maybe kind of cling on to hope is that maybe because of the fact that this is sort of a season with lower expectations for Lou, and because young players sort of struggle with, gaining that consistency, I've mentioned that time and time again, you would hope that maybe he can put it all together. Maybe Pedro Trollio can help him sort of hone that all together and just sort of get him to say, hey, listen, you are a brilliant footballer. If you want to go abroad and, really make a name for yourself, you can't just check out 15 minutes at a time. You have to take over games because he has the talent to do that, Brian, as you mentioned. But like Carrillo, unfortunately, has a tendency to sometimes just drift in and out of matches and look almost kind of lazy. Maybe that's a bit too harsh of a term to use, but
disinterested.
Yeah, disinterested. That's probably the way to go. Yeah, so you would hope that from a Peruvian perspective, he can put it together because this is a massive season for a lot of Lau youngsters. You hope that he is the one who stands out the most just because he was deemed to be sort of one of the next great ones coming out of that age group.
Let's briefly go over the other matches because we're running out of the first 30 minutes. So what do you think? I'll let you go. What do you think of the other matches generally? I'll just go over a brief recap. So yesterday, Sport Huancayo won with 2 late goals over Union Comercio. They scored in the 90th minute and the 91st to win the match, turn around a 1-goal deficit. They tied it up and then they won it in the last minute. Think of QPR Manchester City, but without the crazy commentators. And Sport Boys won with Tejada hat-trick. A dream debut. He says his debut. I mean, he played in the Super Copa, but he wasn't starting.
Mm-hmm.
His league debut. I'll say that.
Yeah.
His league debut for Sport Boys. And Melgar won against Municipal, but I don't want to know any more about Melgar tonight. So, Peter, what else do you think?
I'm sorry. Man, you're all ranted out already. My God, you put a lot of passion to that. I'll start with Sport Boys. Tejada, I mean, when you watched Sport Boys in the Supercopa, it was clear that their one sort of issue in that match was just the finishing. And that if Tejada starts, that will no longer be an issue. It's clear that they will be perfectly fine. And we'll be one of those sort of 4 or 5 teams that will be in that title contending group, even though they might not necessarily be in it the whole time. Tejada, I mean, it doesn't matter how old he gets. It doesn't matter what team he plays for. He's always going to be a sublime striker, one of the best in Peru. He's going to be the reason why they end up getting up there or finishing near the top of the table. Honorable mention, though, to Carlos Neira, the left back, who I thought had apart from one little mishap on the goal that Sport Boys conceded, I thought he was tremendous defensively. Another young player possibly to watch as well on that left-hand side because he was just a defensive machine. After a while, Garcilaso just decided to stop trying to attack down that flank. So, yeah, overall, a fantastic start for Sport Boys in their return to La Primera after nearly a 6-year absence.
Shout out to Christopher who's in the chat and Ken Thuram. Hello to both you guys. Christopher says, boy made about Tejada dependency. They definitely hope not, but you may be right because at times they were kind of lacking attack. they were kind of toothless at times without him. But we'll see how that goes on. I agree with you on Carlo Neda, but I thought the second best player of the match was Mario Tajima, who I thought was very dynamic in the middle.
Yeah.
So I think those are two best players. And as for another match, it's really not much else to talk about. I think those are the big ones. I don't think we should talk about the lower division matches. Binacional didn't really have a really good start.
No, they did not.
I'm kind of surprised at that, but we'll see what happens. So I guess we can finish with the league then, and I think we can go to the questions, which we got a few. All last minute, we have 3 questions, and try to answer them all. So the first question is by Robert Birdie. Is San Martin the real deal, or Duarte be in the running for the goalkeeper spot for the World Cup? So San Martin, I don't think they're the real deal. I think they're going to be worse than last year. And as for Duarte being the goalkeeper spot, it's very possible now that Casada is probably not going to go on alone. Mm-hmm. So I can see Casada being the future Veracruz goalkeeper if they stay up. So if they stay up, Galese will be off, and then Casada will become the starting goalkeeper. This is all an assumption. Because I honestly think Veracruz can do it. I think Lobos' form is really helping them at the moment. And they've really improved since Ramos came in. But we'll talk about that later. We have them in our plans. And I think Duarte is definitely an option. But it'll probably be Diego Penny because Gareca's always liked Penny. And Penny's playing well as of late. So what do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. As we know, Gareca doesn't like to sort of switch up his squad too much. But look, if Duarte has a decent enough season for San Martin, I can't see why he won't. In terms of San Martin, in terms of whether they're the real deal, I mean, they're such a tough team to get a read on just because they have so many young players starting. And ironically, it was a veteran who ended up kind of winning the game for them in a lot of ways. One of the 2 Ivorian youngsters, Ake Arnaud, I thought was actually pretty decent. In that match.
So did I. I thought it was impressive. I don't know how fast they trained them, but he played in a very Peruvian way. He was using his strength, and it was hard to take the ball from him, and he held the ball really well. So I was impressed. I still think they kind of took a gamble on him. I mean, it seems kind of fishy for San Martin scouts to go to Africa and scout them. I'm convinced just saw videos, but either way, I think that he was decent, very decent.
He was very decent. But yeah, I mean, San Martin always do this, though. They always have such a massive turnover of youngsters because, of course, they kind of have a very tight-knit relationship with Sporting Cristal. They brought in a bunch of players on loan from there, and they always do tend to have a younger squad. You look at this group, and it's certainly lacking in quality compared to last year. They lost a lot of key players, but they've done this every single year. The last 3, 4, 5 years, they've always been able to finish mid-table fairly comfortably mainly relying on those younger players. So, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to say that they're the real deal in that way, but maybe finishing any higher, I wouldn't think so. I'd say mid-table at best.
All right, next question. We got 2 questions from Peruano for Life, who asked us a few questions in the past. If you had to pick one of the young Peruvian players to start in the World Cup, if someone in their first team gets injured, who would it be? Example, Benavente, Aquino, Sandoval. Well, out of those 3, I think Aquino is the first choice because
surprise.
He's already the backup to Tapia, and I think he could rival Tapia. I mean, I don't think he'll rival Tapia from the spot because Gareca is going to start Tapia no matter what. But I think that Aquino could rival Tapia level. So, as for another young player, I don't think Sandoval will get it because he's not having a very good start in Mexico. I mean, he has the Copa MX tonight to prove himself. Prove himself that the red card was a mistake. But I don't think he's that great. I've never been a fan of him personally. I didn't like him at Cristal. I don't think he'll do great in Mexico. And Benavente is a very possible option, but I still have my reservations on him.
Well, just to be different from you, because I think Aquino is easily the standout out of all the young players, certainly one of the best who isn't starting. I will go with Benavente just because I think he can offer you, and we'll discuss him more in depth when we talk about the Peruvians about Roundup, but I just think that in the current form he's in, when he's on, Brian, there are fewer Peruvian players who are as talented as him, just with his dribbling ability, his overall technique. And he's one of a few Peruvian players, who, when he is just taking over games, brings me to the edge of my seat. And I think that if, a Christian Cueva got hurt or even any of those, wingers got hurt as well, he could slot in there as he's done in the past in qualifying as well as the previous Copa Americas as well. I think he'd do a bang-up job for anyone who would happen to get hurt in those positions.
As for another player we should mention, Miguel Araujo, who's not going to be starting as well, but he'll be an excellent option to replace Rodriguez and Ramos. Yeah. It's already arguably better than Ramos. So it's I'm only saying arguably, but I think that Araujo is another choice. So yeah, just make sure that we're not only reading your examples, Michael. Araujo is definitely one to watch out for. Yes. Anyways, one more question we have. One more question, and that is from Peruano for Life again. Two important first players in the first team, Trauco and Carrillo, seem to be out of favor. How's this going to affect us for the World Cup? I think Trauco is going to be fine, personally, because, he's not getting selected for squads, but I'm still not entirely convinced he's out of it because I think that Trauco, it's still the state leagues. I mean, it's still very early in the year, and it's weird that it hasn't started yet, but, I mean, these leagues, I know the Brazilians take it seriously, kind of like the English with the FA Cup, where they take it seriously, but the foreign managers don't. But I think that Trauco's going to be fine because it's still very early on in the season. He came late to preseason. I think give him a little more time before ruling him out. Carrillo is definitely out of favor now because I think this could be a blessing in disguise. He's always seemed to drift in matches. Like in his first few matches back for Peru, he was unstoppable, and then he started looking disinterested again. So it's kind of hard to tell with him. JFO is a better player in every sense of the way, but it's you can always move him to the 10. And if Carrillo impresses in one of his sub appearances, he might impress enough to at least gain more minutes, at least as a sub, or then start in general, which is doubtful, but it might happen.
Yeah, I'll start with Carrillo just because I think he's the one who's in dire straits right now. Juro Deulofeu has hit the ground running at Watford. That game against Chelsea, he was sublime. I mean, he was easily unstoppable. And the problem for Carrillo is Deulofeu offers everything that Carrillo can offer, plus better finishing, superior vision. And he's just a player who, we've seen this at AC Milan. We saw it in brief spells at Everton, and now obviously at Watford in his first two games. He takes over games by the scruff of the neck. Like, it is night and day compared to Carrillo. He certainly had his moments with Watford. Before Deulofeu arrived, he was playing pretty decently. But Deulofeu, and I think because of the fact that he wasn't getting the minutes of Barcelona for obvious reasons. He comes in, he's motivated, he's back in England, he's getting a chance to start now under a Spanish coach. Of course he's going to be motivated. And unless Carrillo can really impress in training or just make the most of his substitute appearances, which are only 4 or 5 minutes long now, his spot at the World Cup is going to be in trouble, especially as Farfan continues to be in form. He scored and assisted in Lokomotiv's previous two friendlies. He was sublime yet again. And Hurtado's on fire, just scored against his former team, Pachos de Ferreira. 2018 certainly been kind to him. I mean, there's a lot of depth in that right wing. So it's not like if Carrillo's out of form and not playing, Gareca won't be lacking any options. And then for Trauco, first of all, he's coming off a season in which he played a ton of football. He started close to 50 matches in all competitions, 50 matches. That's a lot of football to be playing. So that's factor number one. There are reports that he has muscle discomfort, which is not a surprise, which is why he arrived to preseason late. The state championships are what they are. They're pretty much just sort of warm-up tournaments, even though some Brazilians take it more seriously than others. I wouldn't worry at all about his spot. He'll eventually be back in. Paulo Cesar Carpegiani became Flamengo's coach over the offseason. I'm sure he's just looking at different options right now. If he doesn't play this upcoming weekend, and even in the weekend after that, maybe you start to worry a little bit. But right now, I'm not too concerned about him.
Yeah, neither am I. I think I'll give it 3-4 weeks, and then I'll judge.
Mm-hmm.
So, now we can talk about Peruvians abroad, which there's some discussion to be talking about. Not as much as last week, but there's one big topic And those are the Veracruz players. And I mentioned it earlier that I think Veracruz will stay up because ever since Ramos was put in that team, Peter got a spot on. They're looking a lot better in defense. I remember the match against Santa Laguna where they were winning 1-0 for most of the match. Ramos, not only did he almost score, the goal that was scored, he almost got a touch to it, and he almost got the goal. But at the end of the day, it's a team game, so he's not gutted about that at all. He's happy for it. But Ramos, he got taken off injured from Veracruz, and then he started looking leaky in defense again. He started looking like they were going to concede, and they did concede. They conceded a penalty, and they lost. They didn't lose, but they drew the match 1-1. So yeah, the second match, I believe he was injured after that, but the match after he played and Veracruz won. So and they're looking a lot better in attack too. I'm not sure how much of down that has to do with Cartagena, but they're looking better in midfield and attack. And the goalkeeper Paul Gales is on fire, and it's proving that he just needed a better defense.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the case for any goalkeeper. I mean, you put a leaky defense in front of him, of course he's not going to look as good as he actually is. And that was the case with Gaese at Veracruz until Ramos showed up. Those 2 or 3 saves he made in the first half, I mean, I was making all sorts of strange noises after he made those saves. I was like, oh my God, did he just do that?
Ray Hudson.
Pretty much, yeah. I went, high-pitched squeals, like I'm some sort of farm animal. That's basically what I did.
Kilo Panchos, Christopher said that.
Yeah. We need to start trademarking a term for them and the Lobos players as well, because, of course, 3 of them on the same team. Gaese, tremendous again. Christian Ramos, I mean, you said it all there. I've said it in my Peruvian roundup. Even when that Veracruz defense looked a little leaky, he was there to snuff out the danger and was the main reason why they got the clean sheet this past weekend. He is going to be, I think, the difference between them staying up and getting relegated. And speaking of that, Veracruz can actually breathe a little bit easy because if they win this upcoming weekend and Lobos lose, Lobos actually go into the relegation zone and Veracruz jump above them. And I would actually think that Lobos are now the favorite to go down, which I would have never thought at the beginning of the season. They look absolutely dreadful. Puente has them playing a completely different style. They don't really take it to teams as much as they did. That was one of the great things about Lobos is how much they attacked, no matter who the opponent was. They're not doing that anymore, and that's affecting Advíncula, that's affecting Avila as well, not so much Aquino. But I digress. To finish off on the Veracruz point, Wilder Cartagena. Defensively, very, very stable, I thought, in both games so far. It's clear, though, that he is struggling with the pace of Liga MX, which is totally understandable. He is new to the league. It is a pretty big step up, and he is playing for a team that is battling relegation. And he's never been the strongest, I shouldn't say the strongest, but the most consistent player on the ball. And you can see that he's used to having that extra half second or full second to decide what he's going to do when in possession. But in Mexico, you aren't afforded that luxury like you are in Peru. So that's something he might have to get used to, especially if he wants to totally improve as a footballer, because I feel like if he's just this sort of, defensive-minded sort of destroyer-type midfielder, that only takes him so far. But I feel like he has the quality to improve on the ball because he's played in a couple of very good long passes. So it's clear that his vision's fine. He just needs to get used to the pace.
Yeah. I think that Lobos are going to go down now. Who do we Veracruz have next, by the way? I think it was Club America, isn't it?
For Lobos or for Veracruz?
Veracruz.
Veracruz. I think they actually have a tougher matchup this week. I could be wrong. I believe I think
Club America's versus Tigres. I'm sorry, I got that one wrong. But who are they? Yeah, check really quickly.
Yeah, so Veracruz has Pachuca. Veracruz has Pachuca at home, though.
Winnable.
I believe that is at home. So they could win that. And then I believe Atlas actually plays Lobos, so a battle of Peruvians there with Gomez and potentially Villarreal. And
it's a ball of the table clash, but I think Atlas can take it. I'm not too faithful with Lobos at the moment. And to be honest, I prefer them to go down because the Peruvians that are on loan, Avila's probably going to be sent back to Peru, probably back to Sporting Cristal again, which would be a waste for Sporting Cristal considering Olivares is there, Herrera is there, they don't really need him. So but it's part of what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Lobos, I mean, it is disappointing because they were probably my favorite team to watch. But like you said, Veracruz has the two players on permanent deals with Cartagena on loan with an option to buy. So if you were to pick a team to stay up from a Peruvian point of view, it's definitely Veracruz out of the two. But I also wouldn't rule out Atlas being dragged down there. Same with Querétaro. I think Querétaro are also just above Veracruz at the moment in the relegation table too. So there are a few teams that could possibly go down. But certainly the one for Peruvians that they don't want to see go down is easily Los Tiburones Rojos.
Speaking of Querétaro, I actually saw the under-20 match between Querétaro and Monarcas, and I saw Joel Sanchez play as a defensive midfielder for who knows why, and he played terribly. Let's just say that he's not going to get a first-team appearance anytime soon, based on that performance. He was not even another 20s. He can't make a consistent pass. It was just painful to watch from his point of view.
Well, I mean, if he's doing that at under 20 level, that's not exactly a positive thing. So yeah. So I guess we can move on, or unless you have anything else to say about maybe any Mexicans in Peru that have impressed you recently.
I don't know. But Tejeda, Contajanis, those are the only two I can think of at the moment. And Amplis, I think those are only 3 Mexicans in Peru at the moment. So unless you meant the other way around.
Well, or the other way around too. Either one.
Well, I guess we can move on. There's really not much to talk about Peruvians abroad. This pod's going to end a little early, but we're not going to end it just yet. There's still a little bit more to talk about. Guess we could talk about there's really not much. Okay, there's one thing I want to talk about, and I didn't really want to talk about this topic because we talked about Tapi before, but I was talking to a Dutch person the other day, and he told me the reason why Tapia is playing in center back, because that's what the Feyenoord historically does, because Johan Cruyff believed in that. And he's very happy with how Tapia is doing, even though he's making a few mistakes, saying that if he cuts out a few of the mistakes, he can become another Mascherano. Mascherano also moved out from midfield to defense. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting point. Of course, Mascherano wasn't the best player in defense, but he did have his games where he was just unpassable. So it's hard to say. It's definitely hard to say. But I hope he's right. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, he conceded a penalty this past weekend, unfortunately. There was nothing he could do about it, though. It's either concede the penalty or concede the goal, either way. So, bit of a rough ending for him, but he had another good game. He's certainly still looking good. I know some Feyenoord fans are a little bit kind of hot and cold with him at center back, and that's totally understandable. I mean, even Peruvians, when they see him play, they think, oh, yeah, he's great, but he should not be playing there at all. He should be playing in the midfield because that's his best position. Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else to say. I will say, though, to those who haven't seen it yet, check out my article on the Peruvian Waltz about the Renato Tapia center-back experiment and whether it's been successful or not. Foosball Radars on Twitter provided me with a detailed analytical radar showing his underlying numbers as a center-back in the Eredivisie. And it's actually quite intriguing because even if you watch him, which I have, Brian has, I'm sure a few others have as well watching, it's almost interesting to see what the numbers actually look like all graphed out, and then you compare it to the eye test that everybody has. I won't give too much away, but do check it out because it was very intriguing.
Yeah, I definitely found that interesting, but it made me more optimistic about that build. I mean, you're stretching his versatility. The problem is, but it might take a long time. He's only 22 years old. So, he has a tackling, but he's getting exposed a little more. But we've rambled on about this for a long time, so I guess we'll leave it up for this pod. It's really not much just to say. We talked about Carrillo already. We talked about Trauco. I think we can end the pod there. I mean, it's a bit early, but it's smooth. The segue was really nice. It's smooth. It flew by. It was flowing really well because we got the question about Trauco Carrillo. We had that before the Peruvians abroad. So it was really just a bit of cruise players we didn't talk about. So my Twitter handle is B_Bertie98. How are you, Peter?
As always, you can catch me at Galindo PW.
All right. And until then, stay gold. Ben.